A person in the first century would have a lot of money, like maybe a pile of gold. And they would know that if I'm going to hide this gold in my house, I'm not going to hide it in this beautiful ornate box, which says to all the thieves, "In here is my gold." What would you do? You would take this beautiful treasure and put it into this average jar of clay where the thief would never think to go look. It was a very subversive act. And see, what God is doing is God is sending you and I into the world, and we are bypassing the eyes of the enemy because we are imperfect and normal, but within us are the very treasures of God, his holiness, his mercy, his justice, his love, and we kind of in this very subversive way are able to get past enemy lines and reach people in a way that maybe someone who proclaims that they are perfect could never reach. That's what you and I do. Not us, but the God within us. That's who we are. When I was in college, I was at the cafeteria. I think I was having lunch, and a friend of mine, Diana, was there, and then Tim was sitting to the right of me. And Diana had grown up in the church, and she had experienced a lot of what we experience, and that unfortunately the church is filled with a lot of easy sayings, but no depth behind it, right? And so as I was talking to Tim and he was explaining some of the things that he was frustrated with in his life and all these disappointments that he'd been experiencing, you know, when he was sharing these things, there was a sense of like he was looking for some answers. Now remember Diana, she had her radar up for all the Christian cliches because she had heard them all before. So as Tim was sharing his grief and his hurt, and I was kind of fumbling with some kind of words to say, I just blurted out a very simple statement, and it was like, you know what? God still loves you. God is still for you. And we finished our meal. I went away, and Diana called me, and she started yelling at me. She's like, I grew up in the church, and every pastor I heard always says that. There's no real meaningful answers. It's blah, blah, blah. Empty words, empty words. So, you know, I tried to explain why I said what I said, but the truth is I really didn't know other than it was the only truth that I could grab onto and share with him. A week later, she called me crying because Tim pulled her aside and said, you know what? What Kevin shared with me turned everything around for me that day. And there was no great, profound theological statement. It wasn't earth-shattering. He just needed to hear the perfect love of God from a very normal, average person. And she cried and she said, it's because I've heard so many Christian cliches, I didn't think the truth meant anything to him. And what I said to her is, well, honestly, what's a cliche in the mouth of one person is truth in another. But what that comes down to is that the earthen vessel knows he or she is an earthen vessel and is not trying to be something more than they are other than to share the love of God with a person that desperately needs to hear it. That's all a priest is supposed to be. That's all you and I are supposed to be.